This is the Nation Divided Against Itself lesson. This focuses on the election of 1860 and its consequences. To start, you have the Democratic Party, essentially the dominant party of the time. The last two presidential elections, 1852, Franklin Pierce, 1856, James Buchanan, both won by Northern Democrats who were called dough faces, in that they were called that because they essentially seemed to support Southern interests. The Democrats split between John Breckinridge of Kentucky, who represents the Southern Democrats, and Stephen Douglas, the man behind Popular Sovereignty of Illinois, who represents the Northern Democrats. Both of those candidates essentially campaign Breckinridge in the South, Douglas in the North, with neither having much chance of getting much support in the opposite region. Good way to lose an election for the Democratic Party. From there, you had two other parties. You had the Constitutional Union Party. They were pro-slavery and pro-union. They did not want to see the Union dissolve, and they wanted to keep slavery intact. They nominate John Bell of Tennessee, and then the Republican Party. You have Abraham Lincoln. He is known for losing elections. He's won one House seat. He lost to Stephen Douglas in 1858. However, he's a moderate. He doesn't like slavery. He's not an abolitionist, though. He's opposed to slavery extending to the territories. That's what he's opposed to. If you're an abolitionist voting in this election, you do not have someone who supports your platform, and the closest you get is the Republican Party, led by the relatively moderate Abraham Lincoln. So here's how it works out. Lincoln wins 39.8% of the popular vote, but in the Electoral College, he wins 180 popular votes when he needed 152 to win, so he wins comfortably. The reason is that he sweeps the populous northern states. Douglas essentially runs against him in the north and only gets Missouri and a handful of votes in New Jersey. Breckinridge dominates the South, and Bell wins Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. In 8 southern states, Lincoln's name didn't appear on the ballot, and he did not receive one single vote. If the other 3 candidates had pooled together and become one candidate, Lincoln would have lost a couple of states. He would have lost New Jersey and California, but he still would have won the Electoral College. It's a crazy system when someone can win it outright with 39.8% of the popular vote, but that's indeed what happened. And so Lincoln is elected with the South fervently opposed to him. So the lower South secedes. You have secessionists. They're people who wanted the South to leave the Union. South Carolina does this first in December 1860. The lower South were the first states to go, joining them: Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. The upper South, is these states right here, are still very much in play. And the new Confederacy names Jefferson Davis, who had been somewhat ambivalent about secession, as its president. They want to signal to the upper South that they are not extremists, that they are rational and common sense. They're using common sense. It's in their best interest to secede, and so they choose Jefferson Davis as their president. The first battle of the Civil War is Fort Sumter. It's a fort in South Carolina right off of Charleston in Charleston Harbor. They need supplies. Lincoln says, I will supply the fort. South Carolina says, no, you don't. Both sides don't want to fire the first shot because both sides are courting the upper South states, the border states, to stay with them. Lincoln sends a boat full of food. It is fired upon, and Fort Sumter surrenders to Confederate forces. The upper South secedes shortly thereafter, the big reason being Lincoln called for volunteers after Fort Sumter. A federal fort had fallen to this Confederacy. Lincoln said, we cannot let this stand. I am duty-bound by my oath to preserve the Union, and therefore I need 75,000 volunteers. That call for volunteers causes Arkansas, Virginia, where the capitals of the Confederacy moves from Jackson, Mississippi to Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina to join. The border states of Missouri and Kentucky do not join, although the Confederacy considered them part of the Confederacy. Stars 12 and 13 on the Confederate flag are for Missouri and Kentucky, but they really were not Confederate states. They stayed with the Union, sent many people to the Confederate Army, but a lot of states did that, where they sent troops to both sides. Maryland, very important because of Washington, D.C. You can't have the Union capital surrounded by the Confederacy. Lincoln sends troops in there, strong show of force, and the population was essentially pro-Union anyway, and same with Delaware. Delaware was really tied more to the Union, even though it still had legal slavery, and so therefore it joins the Union. That's our election of 1860, House divided against itself lesson.